Breaking news in our nation. The Supreme Court gives Donald Trump the ruling he wanted, while at the same time, one of Trump's former advisors heads to prison. We've got that, plus hurricane season. It's why we have all of our cameras fired up all across the country, and you see them on these monitors behind me. We put the new in news, and when I see it, you're going to see it. I'm Reed Cowan. This is CBS News 24/7. Let's go. All right, let's ride our video feeds first to Connecticut, where one of former President Donald Trump's right-hand men just reported to federal prison. It will be Steve Bannon's home for the next 4 months for defying a subpoena in that congressional investigation into the January 6th riot. In fact, you can see here a small group of supporters gathered outside there on the side of the road, outside the prison, right before his surrender. Our teams are there, and we'll jump back into the scene coming up. We're going to be talking about Steve Bannon and his journey to justice. But we also have major breaking news in the world of Donald Trump, especially his campaign, and this is news that he definitely wanted. The Supreme Court ruling that Donald Trump may claim immunity from criminal prosecution for some of the actions that he took in the final days of his presidency. So today we're going to break this down. We're talking about the ruling, the ramifications, and the reaction. Let's talk about the ruling. So this was a marquee case out of the Supreme Court, much watched, much anticipated. It says essentially a president can claim immunity while acting under official capacity. As to the ramifications, legal cases by a lot of legal scholars today say those cases against Trump most certainly will not play out until after the presidential election. What about the reaction? Well, it depends on who you talk to. We know this. The liberal justices on the Supreme Court say this is a danger to democracy. Well, Donald Trump says just the opposite. He feels it's a good day for democracy. We actually believe that the words of the ruling are important to really scrutinize and drill down on. Let's look at this. They say under our constitutional structure of separated powers, the nature of presidential power entitles a former president to absolute immunity from criminal prosecutions for actions within conclusive and preclusive constitutional authority, close quote. Now let's open another quote. They also go on to say he's entitled to at least presumptive immunity from prosecution for all of his official acts. Now listen to this next line, because these next words will likely influence the what's next part of this story for prosecutors in their cases against Donald Trump. And there are many, right? Quote, there is no immunity for unofficial acts. So that opens up the opportunity to have a lot of questions. And we've got somebody to bring you answers to those questions. CBS News campaign reporter and attorney Katrina Kaufman. Okay, so the language there is very fascinating for me. Let's start with the ruling. That language, presumptive is really weighted language there. What is official? What is not official? Let's get into the ruling.
Hi, Reed. So yes, as you were saying, what the court says is that core presidential powers are deemed to be official acts. And then anything else that could potentially fall under that umbrella, the president has presumptive immunity for, and it's the government's burden to prove otherwise, to prove that those acts qualify as unofficial. And when it comes to this D.C. election interference case against former President Donald Trump, the court made a number of decisions about how that should move forward. For instance, regarding the actions that involved former Vice President Mike Pence, they are remanding that to the lower court for more briefing. She'll have to make a determination on this. They are saying it could fall under this presumptive official category, but the government can also dispute that. And then regarding the fake elector scheme, which is another crucial part of Special Counsel Jack Smith's indictment, that also is being sent back for more fact-finding, which could potentially involve a form of mini-trial that could take place in Judge Tanya Chutkan's court.
Okay, so let's talk about Jack Smith. Of course, we know that his case against Donald Trump likely will get retooled. Will he have time to retool some of his arguments? Because he is literally going to have to hang his whole case now on official versus unofficial acts of the president.
This is going to be a really complicated balancing act for Jack Smith. The court has taken away some of the conduct. So the Department of Justice related conduct, that is out of the indictment, the Supreme Court has said. Other things, Jack Smith is going to have to decide how he wants to slim down these charges what is going to go back for more fact-finding, and how he can move this case forward in the most streamlined way possible. Is it possible to do before November? I'd say it's very unlikely. Maybe there is a very, very, very slim possibility. And I think another important thing to point out from this opinion is that the court has also said that if these acts are deemed official, not only can they not be part of the charges, but they can't even be introduced as evidence at trial. And that also is going to be very significant for this case.
Well, we know that Justice Sotomayor wrote that there were definitely alarm bells going off, and I'm paraphrasing there. What about guardrails? Any guardrails in their ruling for those who say this is a threat to democracy?
Are there any guardrails in the ruling? I mean, yes, of course, the court has written a very thought-out opinion, but as you mentioned Sotomayor's dissent, I just want to flag, because I think her words were really very powerful. You know, she says if a president orders Navy SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival, he would be immune. If he organizes a military coup to hold on to power, also immune. Takes a bribe for a pardon, immune again. And she points out that in every use of official power, the president is now a king above the law. Now, Chief Justice Roberts says otherwise. He says that the president needs this protection in order to be able to function in that role, and that they have created this presumptive official acts category that the government can now take issue with and try to deem some of those acts as unofficial for their indictment. But this is a very, very important precedent that has been set, and it's going to change the limits of presidential power moving forward. Presidents can now potentially act with more impunity related to functions that fall under their core privileges as president and not be prosecuted.
All eyes on Jack Smith and now Judge Chutkan. Thank you so much, Katrina Coughlin. We appreciate you so much, reporting live from our nation's capital. Let's get you to Utica, New York right now, where people are expressing outrage over the death of a 13-year-old. We're talking about Naya Maway, died at the hands of police. That child's family demanding answers. Well, today, police released body camera footage showing the moments before the shooting. Michael George joins us now from Utica. And Michael, everybody just wants to know, what will that body camera video reveal?
Yeah, Reed, I can tell you that police say that this all started Friday night when they stopped two teenagers who they say resembled robbery suspects. One of the teenagers, 13-year-old Naya Maway, fled from officers. That's shown in the body camera video. Now, here's what happens next, according to officers. They say the teen pointed what appeared to be a gun at officers. One officer drags him to the ground. Another officer fires. The teen is fatally wounded. Now, it later turned out that that gun was a pellet gun that resembled a Glock, and officers say that there was no way to distinguish that from a real gun. But there are a lot of community members who are outraged over this, heartbroken. In fact, right here at City Hall, there were about 100 protesters here earlier today demanding justice. Now, this teen and his family are refugees from Myanmar, part of a large community here in Utica called the Karen ethnic minority community. And many of the protesters were also Karen, and they feel that there has been discrimination by the police against them. And so they are calling for charges against these officers. Now, here's what happens next. The officers are on paid leave pending an investigation by the state attorney general's office. And I can also tell you there's an internal investigation at the Utica Police Department underway as well. Reed?
Michael George, thank you so much for the update. We know a community is hurting over that while police race to get answers to a community that wants them. Coast to coast and streaming worldwide, you're watching CBS News 24/7. We come back in just a few minutes. Coast to coast and streaming worldwide, you're watching CBS News 24/7, where we know we are seeing history write itself in real time. Think about it today. Well, Donald Trump gets a ruling from the Supreme Court that he celebrates today. One of his men who helped get Trump to the White House is going to the big house. We're talking, of course, about former Trump aide Steve Bannon. He just reported to federal prison today in Connecticut. So let's bring in CBS News correspondent Nikki Battiste live in Danbury, Connecticut. Okay, so Steve Bannon will have dinner in prison tonight. He wanted to stay out of prison, but ultimately he had to report What will happen to him tonight behind bars, and how did he get here?
Hi, Reed. Like you mentioned, Steve Bannon checked into this prison here in Danbury, Connecticut, around noon today. He spoke with reporters and about 25 supporters, 10 protesters just before he went in. He just said over and over again he's proud to go to prison, essentially if it means Donald Trump might be elected again. He is in this facility being treated like every other prisoner here. He went in through medical detectors, had a strip search. He'll undergo a mental evaluation, and then he'll be in a bunk, and he'll be among the rest of the prisoners here. Most of the prisoners here are in for white-collar crime. There are a few violent offenders, about 1,200 inmates. A lot of questions about whether or not Steve Bannon will be able to do his podcast. He said he will not conduct business, but he does have about 300 minutes a month of phone time, 15 minutes at a time. So it'll be interesting to see how he utilizes that. He can also write emails through a third party, but there's no internet. So life will look a lot like everyone else for Steve Bannon. And here, his release date is November 1st. Reed?
Fascinating day. And in Danbury, this was a day that Steve Bannon did not want to see. In fact, he had kind of hoped the Supreme Court would help him to avoid this day. Any reaction from Bannon supporters about the Supreme Court on maybe giving Donald Trump the ruling he wanted and not the one that Steve Bannon wanted?
Well, most of the, 24 supporters here were just chanting that Trump's conviction was fake. So that's the feeling here. That's what we heard. Most of them are gone at this point. But, the same statements that we've heard along the way and that you can expect from those supporters. Reed? And some honks, too.
Some honks to show a thumbs up, at least to you in your reporting. Thank you so much for reporting live from Danbury, Connecticut. All right, so we want to get you down to the Caribbean, where right now our video shows communities coming together in real time. They're working to protect one another as Hurricane Beryl barrels across the Atlantic Ocean. And you can see people putting up tarps there. They're doing everything they can for what's expected to be some high-impact winds and some driving moisture from the atmosphere. In fact, meteorologist Jessica Birch watching Beryl's trajectory. Jess, we know people in the path want to know where this one can make landfall. What can you tell us about Beryl?
Absolutely, and it's just north of Trinidad and Tobago right now. We have been tracking the tropics closely with this exact system. The reason being, this is one of the strongest hurricanes we've seen develop just within a 24-hour period in the Atlantic Basin in record history. It went from a tropical storm to a Category 4 within under 24 hours over this weekend, and we're keeping a close eye down there right now as we speak. I want to show you where that track's currently at. It is a Category 4 with max sustained winds in the surface center level just around 150 miles per hour. This is the update that we just got from the National Hurricane Center. It's moving as it moves its way close to Trinidad, Tobago and over it off into the Yucatan Peninsula. It's moving just around 20 miles per hour. Within the next 24 hours and within the next 72 hours, we're expected to watch it get closer and closer to areas like Mexico as we head into this week's forecast. Now, a couple things about this. It's going to hit cooler sea surface temperatures, which is important to note because that's what helps decay it, as well as some wind shear too. So that's the reason why we're watching that track slowly move down to a Category 1, potentially by the time it makes its way into the Yucatan Peninsula. Let's change gears real fast, though. I want to head down to our map. We're going to change gears and take a look at temperatures for us here in the Bay Area and here widespread throughout the state of California, where we are expected to see well above average temperatures heading into the next 6 to 10 days. A lot of heat is starting to build all throughout California, all throughout Arizona and Nevada, and we're seeing a similar trend down in the south too, with daytime highs already today sitting at 101 degrees near Dallas as we gear up and get ready for the 4th of July. I have more on this heat coming up in a bit, but for now, back over to you, Reed.
All right, Jessica Birch, thank you so much. Just in time to crash your summer plans, cases of COVID-19 are on the rise across the country. Now, although individual cases are no longer being counted, we can tell you the CDC says that infections are growing or likely growing in 43 states. Infectious disease expert Dr. William Schaffner calls this the summer bump that happens every year. In fact, it's happened since 2020. After years of exposure, he says our bodies are more prepared to fight COVID, but he still encourages everybody to take those precautions.
Virtually all of us have had some experience with COVID in the past, whether through infection or vaccination or both. So what we call our population immunity is much better. So there are fewer severe diseases.
So updated COVID-19 vaccines will be available from, and you know these names, Moderna, Novavax, and Pfizer later this year. The CDC recommends everyone 6 months and older should get a vaccine. The agency says last year, more than 75,000 Americans died from COVID-19, and more than 900,000 people were hospitalized. Let's check in with our CBS partners all over the country today, and they say there's a chorus sounding the very same. The heat is not keeping people from travel headed to the July 4th holiday. In fact, roads are packed, runways are packed. Get this, more than 70 million of you are traveling, according to AAA, for Independence Day. 6 million of you will be wheels up to the sky. In fact, I'm told those numbers are now up 7% from 2023, so bottom line, expect long lines at the TSA.
Get to the airport early because so very many more people are traveling right now.
Rounding out those numbers, almost 5 million of you traveling by bus, cruise lines, and trains. In just a little while on CBS News 24/7, we're going to take you live to Philadelphia to show how travelers in real time are doing. That's coming up in our next half hour. Moms and dads traveling with kids, take a deep breath. Let's show you the right now angle of this national travel story. Traveling in New Jersey by mass transit, well, you're going to want to hear this headline, and you won't like it. You're going to have to dig deep to pay a little bit more to travel. In the heat this week, a lot of complaints about delays and long lines and cancellations, and now a new chance to be unhappy in that area because word of a 15% price hike this morning. We're watching a growing outcry also about this developing in that area of our country. Riders out protesting outside New Jersey Transit headquarters. They are saying enough is enough. We're watching. Coast to coast and streaming worldwide, we're not charging extra. You're watching CBS News 24/7. We're back in just a few minutes. All right, CBS News 24/7, and you're seeing reaction from Donald Trump to that breaking news, the Supreme Court ruling that Donald Trump may claim immunity from criminal prosecution for some of the actions that he took in the final days of his presidency. You know, off the top of this broadcast, we promised you the ruling, the reaction, and the ramifications. So let's dig in a little bit deeper here. CBS News political director Finn Gomez joined us now. Okay, so let's talk about the narrative that will now take shape in our country after this ruling.
Yeah, I think with the Trump campaign, I spoke to some of the advisors on that campaign to the former president who say that this politically they expect this to help them. They were through the roof with their glee and joy after this ruling that kicks it back to the lower court. For another reason also is that they believe that the likelihood of this going to trial before the convention really becomes pretty small in the prospect that could occur. So frankly, it sort of clears the lane, clears a slate for Trump with a little over 100 days until we get to that November 5th election, and just a couple days, frankly, a few days before the Republican National Convention that gets underway next week in Milwaukee.
You know who I thought of today is Liz Cheney and the people who sat on that January 6th committee. Does anything that came out from the Supreme Court's ruling today, at least in your mind, nullify or at least dilute the work of the January 6th committee, at least in the minds of the public?
I think it does. I think it does have that effect. I think it negates a lot of the points and a lot of what came out of those weeks of intensive focus and coverage on the January 6th events, on that the mob that essentially attacked the Capitol 3 years ago, excuse me. So I think that it does. I think there's a sense that it does. I think politically, we did hear the Biden campaign. They held a press conference call where they went after this ruling, where they went after the sense that this will now set the table for Trump and some of the things that he's campaigned on, including more expansive executive powers under the president and under the White House if he wins in November.
All right. Always great commentary. And hey, the best glasses in broadcasting today. You win the prize. Finn Gomez, CBS News political director. We appreciate you so much. We will wait and see. Well, now to Massachusetts now, where the jury in the Paramount murder trial does not appear to be in a hurry to issue a verdict. Think about this. Reed is accused of running her police officer boyfriend down to die in the snow, and the jury is now telling the judge again they're deadlocked this morning, which raises more fears of a potential mistrial. We're day 5 So far, the door leading to the jury room is sealed shut. We have our cameras. We are poised there whenever we hear from the jury that there's a verdict or not. When it happens, we'll bring it to you immediately. So let's go to Ohio right now. We are following gunfire near the campus of the University of Cincinnati that left 3 dead and 2 injured. We're also getting word that police caught 2 suspects in this case. So here's the video out of that scene. The emergency call came in just after 3 a.m. When police got there, they say they found several people suffering from gunshot wounds. Police also found multiple firearms on the scene there. You know, we don't usually see this, but one of the suspects is also one of the victims of the shooting. In fact, university officials used social media to get the word out. They warned students to be observant and, in their words, take action. We are also learning of a big announcement by Boeing, a $4.7 billion plan to buy most of Spirit Aerosystems, part of the aerospace giant supply chain that builds fuselages and critical parts of both Boeing planes. Now, a little corporate history here. You may not know this, but Boeing used to own Spirit. They now feel that buying it improves safety and quality. Now, keep in mind, Boeing is under intense scrutiny by regulators following the January blowout of that panel on the Alaska Airlines 737 MAX 16, some thousands of feet up in the air. We want to take it to New Jersey now, where the 8th week of the bribery trial for Democratic Senator Bob Menendez is underway, with the defense team calling up their first witnesses. The senator's lawyers have hinted that the senator's sister-in-law could actually be among the first to take the stage on his behalf. Now, a reminder of what's at stake here. He and his wife are accused today of accepting hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash and gold and other bribes in exchange for political favors. Prosecution rested its case Friday after getting testimony from some 30 witnesses. Not done yet. We are not only live coast to coast, but also worldwide. So let's take you to France right now, where a rise by the right seizes the headlines. Here's what's happening right now. A far-right National Party just took the lead in the first of 2 voting rounds in what's being called a snap election. And there's also word today of historically high turnout, as a lot of voters wanted either to block the far right or dump French President Emmanuel Macron's party. Joining us live from Paris right now is Elaine Cobb. Elaine, why the rise of the right there in France? What is fueling this right now?
Reid, there's been a lot of dissatisfaction with President Macron's government from the pension reforms he brought in that led to huge protests, to a feeling that he's not doing enough for their purchasing power, and to a feeling that he's getting to be somewhat out of touch with what the people actually want. And when his party didn't do well during the recent European elections, and the far right did do well, he called these snap elections, hoping the French voters would say, OK, we will join you in blocking the far right. But as you said, many said, look, we're just tired of your party. So the far right has been gradually moving itself to a much more acceptable image, and they're very keen on taking power and certainly pushing for a majority in next Sunday's decisive second round.
So let's talk about the majority. I'm having to take a masterclass in the structure of France's government, so maybe you can clear this up for me. But if the right takes the majority, that means that the president has to appoint as prime minister somebody from that party, correct? And in that environment, how can they work together?
Well, he doesn't actually have to, but if there's a majority, it would be unprecedented to not do so. However, at the moment, the polls predict that the far right will not get a complete majority, in which case the president could decide to simply ask the current prime minister to stay in power and rule a sort of an ad hoc coalition. And he might do that because of the Olympics that are coming up in later next month, in this month. And so it's something that is definitely on everyone's minds here. And he might simply say, look, we need, a holder government just for now, and then we'll get back to the real business. But if not, whatever happens, there will be what the French call a cohabitation, when the president is forced to work with a government that is not of his choosing or not completely of his choosing. And it means a lot of instability, a lot of wrangling over legislation, over budgets. We already know that the far right has its own ideas on loosening the EU hold on nation states, and also that it's not keen on NATO and has threatened to pull France out of it.
Can cohabitation lead to cooperation, and all eyes of the world right now on France with, as you say, the Olympic Games about to start this month? Thank you so much, Elaine, for your live report. We cover you coast to coast, and there you see, we just made our case worldwide. You're watching CBS News 24/7. I'll be back in just a few minutes. CBS News 24/7, streaming coast to coast and worldwide. We want to get you back to that breaking news that the campaign wanted in the Trump camp. The Supreme Court ruling Donald Trump can claim immunity from criminal prosecution for some of the actions he took in the final days of his presidency. That ruling, 6-3 among the justices. Here's Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson with the dissenting opinion. We want to read this to you. The majority of my colleagues seem to have put their trust in our court's ability to prevent presidents from becoming kings through case-by-case application of the indeterminate standards of their new presidential accountability paradigm. I fear that they are wrong, but for all of our sakes, I hope that they are right. One justice's voice. Let's get out to CBS News chief legal correspondent Jan Crawford. Jan, also Justice Sotomayor wrote some pretty damning things to say about this, speaking to immunity, saying that this paves the way for a president to potentially launch a coup to hang on to power. Do you really see it as that scary?
No. I mean, I don't think that it's going to allow a president to order SEAL Team 6 to, conduct an assassination. And that's something that, has come up quite a bit in this argument. But I think the concerns by the three dissenting justices are essentially quite valid, that the justices here and walling off certain behavior that presidents can be prosecuted for are kind of endorsing this principle that our president is almost like a king, as Justice Sotomayor pointed out in her dissent, which is as strong as it could be. She said, "I fear for our democracy, I dissent." And so that's the language that we saw from the dissenters, which also shows you the stakes in this case. I mean, obviously, this decision, 6-3, written by the Chief Justice, John Roberts, is a win for Donald Trump. There is no question about it. It's not the slam dunk win he wanted. He has absolute immunity from some of his official acts as president, but the court said he does not have that immunity for his unofficial acts. So what does that mean? That means this is going to be delayed. It's going to take some time to go back to the lower courts, where the trial judge in this case is going to have to figure out what Trump can and cannot be prosecuted for all of that activity around January 6th. Can that happen before November? Probably not. I think this could well delay this case until after the election. You can't rule it out, but I think it's going to be very difficult.
Well, and before we didn't have really a sharpened pencil on what official versus non-official meant. Judge Chutkan is going to really have a big case cut out for her to do that. How do you think she's going to shape this? And especially with Jack Smith also watching this closely, how will they now retool their approach?
So, Reed, this is what's really interesting. When you go back and look at the transcripts in this case, it's pretty clear in those oral arguments in April, this is what the court was going to do. I mean, you could just see this is what was coming. So Jack Smith, I mean, he's got stuff ready to go. He knows, he has a sense of what this court is going to say Trump still can be prosecuted for, giving, kind of this little groundwork for the trial court judge. So he's going to be ready to go to file papers, maybe narrow his indictment a little bit, but there's still things that Trump can be prosecuted for January 6th. So, that is there. And the court did lay out, and that's the one thing I would say that I found a little surprising. The court actually did give a little more guidance to Judge Chutkan than I thought they might. I mean, they didn't give her a lot of specific guidance in their roadmap, like, turn left here and right here, but they told her what direction to go. And I think that's also really important. But Jack Smith is going to be, I'm sure, is already knows what direction he's going to go in this case and how he's going to proceed going forward. Judge Chutkan, I mean, she is an experienced, highly regarded judge, so we'll see how she handles it. There's another case in the D.C. Circuit that's looked at similar issues between official and unofficial act. The courts today in their decision indicate that they agree with a lot of that reasoning, so they have that case out there to look at. So there's a lot for them to parse through, but again, going back to what I'm saying, that's not something you can do overnight. You know, there's going to have to be hearings. There's going to have to be briefings. There's going to have to be documents filed. And then after all of that, she's going to rule on what's official and unofficial. Then Trump's going to try to appeal that, go all the way back up again. So that's why I say I think it is unlikely that we're going to get anything in this case, any trial going before November. The same for the other case that Trump is facing charges on in Florida, the classified documents case. I don't see that one going to trial before the election. So, Reed, what does that mean? That means we have a convicted felon now running for president as the presumptive Republican nominee. He has been convicted in one case in New York, and he has sentencing in that case on July 11th before the Republican convention. And that's the one that we've got to pay close attention to. Is that judge in that New York case going to sentence Donald Trump to jail?
Well, I don't know for sure, but I have a feeling the minute the alarm clock goes off, you are reaching for your phone to see what happened and when it happened so that we can have the expert analysis. You are the quickest study.
We'll be ready for it, Reed. We're going to explain it. We're going to explain it the best we can.
I appreciate it, as always. Jan, thank you so much. Have a great afternoon. Hey, our video feed's directing us to Capitol Hill with a breaking news story. House Republicans launching a lawsuit against Attorney General Merrick Garland. Why? They want access to audio tapes from President Biden's interviews with special counsel Robert Hur. So let's take you back in time. Months ago, the special counsel found that Biden had willfully retained highly classified information after leaving the White House as vice president, but found that criminal charges in that case weren't really warranted. Well, guess what? President Biden claims executive privilege on the recordings that were taken during that investigation. So fast forward to today. The House Judiciary wants the courts to reject Biden's claims, calling Biden's use of executive privilege self-serving. Now, for their part, the DOJ is accusing Republicans of wanting access to tapes for political purposes. This is one to watch for sure. Hey, we've got video coming in from Barbados where people are preparing as Hurricane Beryl barrels through the Atlantic. Meteorologist Jessica Birch watching this one as thousands of people get ready and prepare. Boarding up windows there, Jess.
Absolutely. The imagery coming out of that right now, it's scary because the tropics are already active. The sea surface temperatures down there are as warm as what they usually should be around September, which this is a big concern when it comes to hurricanes and, of course, to the long strength of them as well. Now, this hurricane we're keeping a close eye on right now is well down in the south, impacting areas like Trinidad and Tobago as we speak, as it moves its way slowly off closer to Mexico. I want to dive straight into that right now, and I want to show you the track and what's happening because right now it's sitting at a Category 4 wind speeds just at the center, still sitting around 150 miles per hour. And this is expected to impact many areas throughout that area as we extend, just north of South America as we extend into the next 24 hours as it billows its way closer to Mexico. Here's the track right now. We're expecting it to turn down to a Category 3 just within the next 24 hours, continuing to move south of Jamaica, Haiti, and the Dominican Republic. Now, as this moves all the way over into Mexico, it hits cooler sea surface temperatures and some wind shear, too. That's going to help decay this hurricane as it moves its way closer to Mexico and inland areas. As of now, this is not expected to impact anywhere throughout the continental U.S., but we continue to keep a close eye on this because we can see some rain showers just to the north sweeping up into areas like the Bahamas, close to around Miami as we head into the next 72 hours. We'll have more on this track coming up in a bit and how this is impacting those local communities. For now, Reed, I'm going to send it over to you.
All right, Jess, thanks so much. Millions of Americans hitting the road or taking to the skies for the 4th of July holiday. And we're just learning the numbers are already breaking records. The roads are packed. The runways are packed. In fact, more than 70 million traveling, according to AAA, for Independence Day. 6 million of you are wheels up taking to the sky. In fact, I'm told those numbers are up 7% from 2023. So bottom line, expect long lines at the TSA. And our friend Nikki Dementri in the thick of it all at Philadelphia International Airport. Nikki, I can almost channel the sounds of babies crying and parents taking deep breaths. What's the picture there in Philly?
Reed, I think you were listening just a little bit before we went live with you, because that's exactly what we've heard throughout baggage claim throughout the day. And you've also heard a lot of frustrations and headaches. Why? Because severe weather in our area here in Philly caused many cancellations and delays. Just today alone, at last check with FlightAware, more than 100 delays and nearly 100 cancellations. But this sea of bags and the line of people at customer service, that sort of started overnight. That's dozens, if not hundreds, of checked luggage you're looking at right now. It's just sitting outside of this American Airlines customer service counter. A spokesperson for this airline blamed severe weather yesterday for both those flight and baggage issues. Here in Philly, as I mentioned, we saw major storms roll through yesterday evening into the late night, but people were getting cancellations. They were saying, okay, 11, you're going to go out. And then it changed to 4 a.m. and then it finally got canceled. Well, now people aren't getting rebooked until later in this holiday week. Obviously, things are very busy with the holiday travel. You showed all the numbers, Reed. It's going to be a busy, busy holiday week, and all of these people are trying to get reunited with some of these bags.
Yeah, somebody watching right now, coast to coast and streaming worldwide on CBS News 24/7 said, hey, there's my bag. Not for nothing, don't stop for that Wawa Philly cheesesteak at Wawa Market. Get to the airport and get there fast. Nikki, thank you so much. That live report from Philadelphia, we appreciate it. All right, you're watching CBS News 24/7. More when I come back. Take you now to our map in Southern California, where the Sierra fire threatened buildings near Fontana over in San Bernardino County. This fire first reported Sunday afternoon. It jumped from just 40 acres to more than 350 acres. And guess what? It happened in more than 2 hours. Crews say this fire has been brought to 80% under control, so that is heroic right there. And the threat to structures, we understand, is limited. But now the conversation shifts to air quality. I mean, you look at the smoke from that burning out SUV right there. So there are air quality advisories in effect for local residents in that part of the country through this afternoon. Now this. And you know, friends, that's why we believe big time in our Eye on America reporting, why it's so important. Because in the face of fire, in the face of crisis, we find stories of people coming together to find solutions. So today, a look at innovations to help the firefighters who are out there performing heroic work. They're confronting a major threat to their own health while they come and fight fires and try to save lives. What that threat is something called forever chemicals. Mark Strassman reports from Bellbrook, Ohio, where a lot of firefighters worry more about what's in their gear and what's in the foam that they use than the smoke they breathe.
In small-town Bellbrook, Ohio, firefighter Jay Leach feels burned.
Most firefighters that got in this job knew it's an inherited risk, but we never knew that the gear and the equipment that we're using is killing us.
Inside Fire Station 22, Lieutenant Leach helped remove buckets of firefighting foam. It's called AFFF, undeniably effective, but laced with PFAS, so-called forever chemicals now linked to various cancers, especially among firefighters.
Cancer caused 72% of active duty firefighter deaths last year, according to the International Association of Firefighters. A separate study showed smoke inhalation causes 4% of active duty firefighter deaths.
A safer foam now exists, and 21 states have introduced policies that limit the use of AFFF firefighting foam. But for Jay Leach, cancer's heartache has no limits.
You said you wanted to show me something.
I do. I keep my wife with me in my helmet. There's a picture of her in there.
Oh, yeah. So you wear that whenever you go on a call.
Mm-hmm.
His wife, Tracy, was a firefighter for 25 years. Her diagnosis in 2017, breast cancer, despite no family history of cancer.
It pretty much ravaged her body. And then December of 2022, she was diagnosed terminally. And 2 weeks later, on Christmas Eve, she passed away.
You can't conclusively prove it.
Correct.
But in your gut.
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly believe that PFAS caused my wife's cancer.
In a statement, the American Chemistry Council, an industry group, said it supports limits on using AFFF, adding, all PFAS are not the same. It is not scientifically accurate or appropriate to group them together when considering safety risks. But for Jay Leach, this moment was cathartic, dropping off buckets of AFFF for destruction. Tens of thousands of gallons of it sit in fire stations across America. Ohio is the first state committed to destroying all of it. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine.
This gives us an alternative.
Sitting there, which does nobody any good.
Does no one any good. You know, it might leak out. There's a danger whenever you have a product like that.
Another worry. PFAS have been inside firefighting gear for decades. PFAS help repel water and contaminants. But put on this gear, and you're wrapping yourself inside suspected carcinogens.
We sweat, our pores open up, and the forever chemicals can go in our body.
19 years into this job, are you more scared of fires, or are you more scared of cancer?
Cancer. Absolutely. I love the job, but at the end of the day, I sit and think, is it worth it?
They realize the irony, scared of what's supposed to protect them. For Eye on America, Mark Strassman, Bellbrook, Ohio.
All right, well, from Ohio all around the states, millions of Americans are traveling this week for 4th of July, and we have two major hotspots when it comes to extreme heat all throughout the continental U.S. And I want to dive into those right now, starting off over near California, Nevada, Arizona, where daytime highs are starting to really heat up as we head into this travel holiday forecast. Daytime highs already sitting in the triple digits in areas like Phoenix, stretching over into Las Vegas. Death Valley today reported to hit around 121 degrees. We make our way over into Dallas now, 101 this afternoon. We're sitting in the 90s all throughout Texas. It is hot and it is well above average. Take a look right behind me. As we head into the next couple days, our big concern right now are two major heat risk areas, Texas, Louisiana area and California too. Here's today's heat risk map alone. Watch what happens as we shift gears. We just turn the page to Tuesday. We now zoom into the Central Valley throughout California, where daytime highs are expected to hit well above average for this time of year. To add to that, heat advisories and warnings are already in effect for areas from Sacramento down into Los Angeles. And we keep a close eye on the south too, because we've been dealing with this heat for over a week now in areas like Texas all the way over into southern Alabama and Mississippi. So those are our two big hot spots as we head into this holiday week. Of course, above normal temperatures all throughout the south, stretching over into California. We're keeping a close eye on that for many Americans traveling for 4th of July. Reed?
All right, Jess, thanks. Let's go to Massachusetts right now because we know what's happening there. The jury in the Karen Reed murder trial does not appear to be in a hurry to issue a verdict. Reed is accused of running her police officer boyfriend down to die in the snow. That jury telling the judge again they're deadlocked this morning, raising more fears of potential mistrial by prosecution. So far, the door leading to the jury room is shut. And when it opens, when and if there is a verdict, I promise we'll bring it to you here on CBS News 24/7 immediately. Well, that is us. That is it for us at CBS News 24/7. We appreciate you watching. As we look forward to the events of the day, we want to show you a live picture of the White House, and here's why. We are still awaiting word from the Biden administration reacting to the ruling in the Supreme Court on presidential immunity and the impacts on Mr. Biden's opponent, the man who wants the keys back to the White House. I'll be back here tomorrow, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern.